Awesome. Thanks, Yamina. Yeah, so we are super excited to have you guys here. Thank you for joining us for paint night. As you guys know, we're here to paint some modern spring flowers. Just where we're at in the Atlanta area, it's like just starting to get warm. Things are starting to turn a little greener than they were before. So seems fitting that we're doing some modern spring florals today. Emma is going to be painting with you guys, and I'll be here reading questions. If you have any, drop them in the chat and I will relay them if I can't answer them myself. And I will try to help you guys out as we're painting. So yeah, without further ado, thanks again for joining us. And I guess I'll turn it over to Emma.
Alrighty, thanks, Stephen. So like Stephen said, thank you guys so much for tuning in with us. We are at a different time today. We thought we'd spice it up a little bit, but just so you guys know, if you are a regular for our Monday night paint nights with Plaid, then just know that next Monday we will return to our normal time. And hopefully, if you were unaware of the time change, you're finding this now on Michael's YouTube page and you can watch it there at your own leisure. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. As always, I will start by listing all of the supplies that you're going to need to paint along with me tonight. We are going to be using FolkArt Acrylic Hunter Green, FolkArt Acrylic Ink Spot, Titanium White, Conch Shell, Purple, Daffodil Yellow, and I believe Engine Red. But just like always too, if you have a red, if you have a yellow, if you have a purple, if you have a light pink, then more than likely you will be able to paint along with me tonight. So do not fret about that. And if you have any questions about a color replacement, then feel free to drop that in the chat and Stephen can ask me those questions and I'll try to help you out there. Next, we're going to want to have some masking tape or painter's tape. You can also have some washi tape or something like that. I always like to have a water basin, a variety of flat brushes. I know that we listed a 7-piece brush set in our supply list, so if you have that, that's awesome. And then a pencil, a palette of whatever kind. I like to use wax-coated palette paper, but you can use a paper plate, a styrofoam plate, anything that you have at home to paint, to make a palette with. Some paper towels, and then my trusty blow dryer. Oh, and I should mention, we upgraded our canvas to be a little bit bigger this afternoon, but the painting called for an 8x10 canvas. But if you have any rectangle or square or really any shaped canvas, then you'll be good to paint with us tonight. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start by applying some titanium white onto my palette. And then I am going to add just a touch of ink spot. Okay, now I'm going to take my 3/4 inch flat brush and I'm just going to go ahead and mix these two colors together. We're trying to get a really soft blue. Okay, so once you've gotten a really soft blue color going on here, I'm going to start and paint by painting this color on the edges of my painting. So don't worry, we're not going to try to make super straight lines right away. We are just going to try to really just paint wherever we see on here. And if we get a little bit into the center part, that's totally fine. That's expected. So I'll show you guys what I mean. We are just going to go ahead and try to paint everywhere that we think our light blue color is going to live. And it's okay if we go a little bit towards the center and intersect with this darker blue color. And you can obviously go ahead and base coat your whole canvas with this light blue color, but you just don't need to. So that's what I'm not going to. Okay, so once your canvas kind of looks like mine, you're probably good to go. So I'm going to rinse my brush. And then I'm going to go ahead and blow dry this so that my paint dries and it's good to go. Okay, you guys, so once your painting is dry, I just always like to go ahead and just feel it with my fingertips, make sure there's not any really tacky spots that I've missed with my blow dryer, and there is not. So we are good to move on to our next step.
Hey,
So
Emma, before we get too far into it, can you say the name of the color that you just used for your background one more time?
Yeah, that was a mix of titanium white and ink spot. So I would say that it is about 5/6 titanium white and 1/6 ink spot.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and rinse my 3/4 inch flat brush. And now with the mixture of blue that we just created, I'm gonna put a little bit of ink spot onto my palette.
Emma, should they paint the sides of their canvas while they have their background color mixed?
Yes, you are more than welcome to if you want to go ahead and do that. If you think your paint is going to dry, I'm not painting the sides of my canvas tonight for time's sake. You guys got me. But yes, if you want to paint the sides of your canvas, then you can absolutely do that now. Okay, so as you guys can see here, we are just mixing a more medium blue color with same two colors, our titanium white and ink spot mixture that we mixed before, but we just went ahead and added some more of that beautiful ink spot color. Okay.
And what size brush are you using?
This is a 3/4 inch flat brush.
Excellent.
And before we get ahead of ourselves, I'm actually going to go ahead and start. Oh my goodness, got a little bit of my ink spot on there. It's okay, we can touch that up later. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take my masking tape. And we're going to go ahead and tape off this square that you can see in our final painting. I'm going to go ahead and start that now. So really you can make your square as big as you want it to be. I'm going to leave probably about a 1/2 inch of space on my two longer sides here. But however wide you want your spaces to be on the outside, I would just recommend that you keep these two sides equal and these two sides equal. That will probably end up looking best in the end if you try to do that. So same thing that we did to the other side, we are going to tape about a 1/2 inch away from the edge. My tape wasn't long enough, so I'm going to cut another piece. Okay, and now on our top and bottom sides, we're going to come in a little bit further. I'm going to come in about 1.5 inches, 2 inches. And we're just eyeballing it. I'm not measuring it with a ruler or anything. You are more than welcome to at home if you want to, but you totally do not need to. Okay, and whenever I do something like this, I always like to run my finger along the edge that I'm going to be painting inside of, just to make sure that my tape is really flush to my surface. And now with that beautiful medium blue color, we are going to go ahead and paint the insides. And I always like to carefully start at my taped edges. And if my tape is running this way, I like to follow that tape line. I have found that you run the risk of getting your tape under, or you're getting your paint under your tape, your risk decreases. And if you need to mix more paint, like I certainly do, you can definitely go ahead and do that too. Okay, so once your center square looks nice and opaque like mine does, I'm going to go ahead and remove my tape. All right, so once we're done with that step, I'm going to go ahead. First of all, I should probably cover where I got my ink spot on my painting. What do you guys think? Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and blow dry my painting one more time. All right, once your painting is dry, we're going to go ahead and we are going to start doing some sketching. So whenever I do a painting like this, a floral painting that's in a vase or some type of vessel like this, I like to think about my composition before I start painting or doing any sketching. So in this case, I know that I want my vase to be the largest thing on my painting. So I definitely want to make room for that. And I just like to keep in mind the spacing of where all my flowers are going to be, where all of my leaves are going to be when I'm thinking about where I'm putting my vase. So for this next step, you can totally use a ruler, but I have confidence in you all at home that you will not need one. Of course, this painting does not need to be perfect. It's just supposed to be fun. So we're going to make some straight sketches, and I'm going to help you guys along the way. So I'm going to start off by making our vase by sketching it out. And so like we just said, we want to keep in mind where our flowers are going to live. So our flowers are probably going to live up here. So we want our vase to kind of end right here. So I'm just going to make a little tick mark about a little bit less than halfway down. And then I want to make 2 more tick marks of where I want my vase to end. So let's say we want it to end right here and right here. And we want those 2 tick marks to be equal from the outside. Does that make sense? And now I always say, you know, work smarter, not harder. So I like to move my canvas around a lot whenever I'm drawing or painting. Make the canvas work for you. So I'm kind of holding my canvas at an angle, and I'm kind of anchoring my hands to the table, and I'm going in a back and forth motion as I'm sketching this out, just to really create a really straight line. I just found that kind of very lightly going back and forth to make our line, it's a lot easier to make a really straight line as opposed to just going straight away. We're going to do the same thing with the other side. And we're stopping when we meet that tick mark that indicates the end of our vase. Okay, and now I'm going to connect these 2 sides like that. And as you guys can see, we have some really cool dimension going on in our vase. So about, let's say, what do you guys think? Like 1.5 inches in, we're going to make another little tick mark. We want our darker purple side to be longer than our light purple side. So I'm just going to follow that up here. And then I'm going to flip my canvas around again, and we are going to make another line, same way we did last time. Just a really light sketch to indicate our 2 purple shades there, okay? And now, before we go ahead and start painting on our purple color, I am going to think about how I want to make the composition of my flowers and my leaves, okay? So the interesting thing about this painting is that a lot of our flowers are really just circles. I mean, really, when you think about it, a lot of paintings and drawings are just a bunch of shapes, okay? So we want to think about that when we're doing this painting. So I'm going to start by drawing some circles that are going to be these cute little pink flowers on here. So I want to have a big circle over here, and don't be scared to overlap your vase, okay? We're definitely going to want to do that in this painting. And then maybe a smaller circle here. Another smaller circle down here, a bigger circle here, a smaller one here. Okay, and right now we are really just going to focus on sketching out those pink circle shapes. All right. Is everyone caught up so far, Stephen?
I think we might have a couple folks who are still catching up to where we're at.
Okay. So while we're at this stage, you can feel free to paint, or not paint, but sketch out some of your leaf shapes. You can go ahead and do that right now if you want. Okay, so we're kind of thinking about some of these areas that we want those whiter flowers to be too. So we want to leave some room for those when we are continuing on with our leaves.
And Emma, every so often, if you could bring your canvas up to the camera just so we can get a close up of what you've sketched out.
Sure. So, and of course, your painting at home does not need to look exactly like mine. Nobody expects it to. As long as you have some circles around there, some leaf shapes, then you are totally set. Okay, so now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to start by painting our base. Okay, so we have this beautiful purple, FolkArt purple. I'm going to add some of that to my palette. And I'm going to actually lighten that right away with just a hint of our titanium white so that we get a really rich purple color. And we're going to go ahead and mix this. Since we already have the brush out, I'm using a number 12 flat brush. I'm going to go ahead and mix my purple with just that touch of titanium white. Okay, so once that purple and that white is mixed together, we're going to go ahead and we are going to paint this section of our vase. And what I'm going to be mindful of when I'm doing this is that I am going to start at the tippy corner here. And I'm going to hold my brush that is loaded with quite a bit of paint, and I'm just going to drag down to create this straight line. Okay, and then I'm gonna, whenever I'm trying to create a really straight edge, I like to hold my brush perpendicular. I usually like to start at a corner because the brush itself, because it has this, the straight edges on the brush, that's gonna help us make those straight lines. I'm gonna start at the corner again. I'm gonna go across. Flipping my canvas when I need. I usually like to start at this corner here and pull down. Pick a corner and pull up. Pick a corner, kind of anchoring myself in that corner so that we keep those straight lines and dragging. Okay, so now without rinsing our brush, I'm going to add some more purple to my palette here. Just a little bit. And I'm going to add some of that lighter purple mixture in to create a darker purple color. Okay, and same thing that we just did before, I am going to add this darker purple color onto the other side of our base. I'm going to start at this corner and I'm going to drag down. Start at the corner, pull up. And just, I found that, when you go slow and steady, when you're trying to create these pretty straight lines, then that definitely helps me. And if you don't feel confident making these straight lines quite just yet, by kind of starting at the corner and pulling or dragging, then you can feel free to use tape to help you, to use a ruler, whatever you're comfortable with.
And Emma, what size brush are you using?
This is a number 12 flat. All right, you guys, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to blow dry this again. All right. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some of our conch shell to our palette paper. I can never say that. Okay. With that on our palette, I'm going to go ahead and rinse off my number 12 flat brush. And we're going to use this brush for our next step of the painting as well. Okay, so we are going to use this color, our conch shell, to paint the largest circles of our painting. So I'm thinking this circle and this circle, but if you want to add more or less, then you can totally do that. But just keep in mind, we want our bigger flower circles to be in this color. So I'm going to start at the edge of one of my circles, and I'm just going to make a swooping motion and come down like that. So starting at the edge, making a swooping motion, a little C curve, okay? And I'm reloading my brush if I need to, and I'm picking up at the edge again, and I am swooping down.
So Emma, if somebody didn't have the color conch shell, is there a color mix that you could suggest for them?
Yeah, you can use any light pink color, any kind of light peachy color. That would work great. Or if you don't want to do little pink flowers like I'm doing today, you could do yellow flowers or purple flowers or blue flowers, whatever you want to do. Okay, so we have one big circle blossom on our painting. And now I'm going to paint my other big circle in this corner over here, doing that same swooping technique. And like I said, you're going to see me constantly turning my canvas. Okay, I'm going to blow dry this really quick, and then we'll add our next round of flowers. I spoke too soon. Before we add our next round of flowers, we are actually going to go ahead and add the base color for our leaves. So grab your hunter green and go ahead and add some of that to your palette. Now taking my number 6 flat brush, I'm going to dip my number 6 flat brush into my hunter green, and I'm going to go ahead and start by filling in some of those leaf sketches that we did in the beginning. So I'm starting at the tips of my leaves. Hold it up so you guys can see a little bit better. And I'm holding at the tips of my leaves, and I'm doing a little curve, just like that. and holding it at the tip and then kind of coming back, curving the other way. And I'm just doing that same motion to fill in those leaves that we sketched out in the beginning. And I don't know about you guys, but in the beginning when we were doing that little sketching, I did not include every single leaf that I wanted to have in my painting. I just tried to put down a general basis of where I wanted my painting to go. So feel free to add more leaves, more greenery at this point if you want to. I'm going to show you guys how I do that in a bit. So I'm adding some more leaves in this upper left corner here of our painting. And you might be thinking, is she intersecting some of those circles that she painted initially? I totally am, because in my mind, you see on our final painting here that some of our flowers are sitting on top of our leaves. So it looks like our flowers are in front of the leaves. So I am intentionally overlapping some of these green leaves on top of our sketch because we can still see what kind of sketch we have going on underneath, but I still want my painting to look really luscious with this greenery. And just keep in mind too, we want to have some dimension in our painting. So we want to have all different sizes of leaves. We want big and small leaves. That's really going to help our painting look really full and beautiful. Okay, so maybe we'll add some more leaves kind of coming out here. So if you didn't do any sketching in the beginning, then you might want to keep in mind that maybe you want some of your leaves to look like they're behind these light pink flowers that we just painted. So maybe we'll paint like half a leaf. I'll show you guys how you can do that. So just kind of starting, holding your paintbrush, right, touching your little pink leaf, and then we'll pull away. So we're not starting at the tip. We're starting at the middle of our leaf. So we're leaving kind of a ½ inch of space in between there. But again, you do not have to do that if you don't want to. That's just a little extra thing you can do. Okay, so since we're working with a really small flat brush, you guys can see how thin it is. We're going to go ahead and paint the stems while we're at it too, the stems of our leaves. And if you don't feel comfortable using a small flat brush for this step, then you can feel free to use a round brush or a liner brush. I would really recommend using a brush where you feel like you have a lot of control. I find that I feel like I have the most control with a small flat brush, so that's what I'm going to use. But we are going to paint the stems. So when we're thinking about painting the stems, we're going to find our most outward leaf. So it would be this leaf or that leaf or that leaf. And we're going to start at the base of there. And we're going to pull in, creating a thin line that's going to come and touch our flower like that. And now once we have that initial stem, we're going to go ahead and connect our other leaves to that big stem. Does that make sense? So we're start finding our outer leaf and we're connecting it to the rest of the bouquet. so that we get something like that, okay? And I'm going to go ahead too, and I'm going to keep in mind those sketches I made. You guys can't really see that well, but I have a flower here. So I'm keeping in mind that I'm going to paint another flower there, but I want that flower to sit on top of my leaves. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and paint some more stems coming out like this, that these little cute yellow buds are going to live on. So I'm just going to create a couple of those.
What size brush is that?
And this is still our number 6 flat. But
Okay.
like I said, you can use a round brush, a liner brush, it's up to you. Okay, I'm going to paint some last couple leaves down here so that our bouquet really looks abundant and overflowing. Okay, and see how we have these new kind of greenery coming here too? We're going to do a similar technique for that. We are going to hold our flat brush and swoop down kind of like we did to paint this sort of deal. We're going to do that over here, creating that vine, and I'm going to create another vine over here. And to create these little leaves that you see on our vine, I'm going to start away from my vine. And I'm going to touch down and I'm going to pull up. So touching down a little bit away from my vine and pulling up. And we're going to create those little tiny green leaves. Okay, then I'm going to flip my canvas around, because if you'll notice, when we do that kind of touch down motion, the initial touchdown spot is where our leaf is the thickest. And when we touch down and then come up, applying less pressure as we meet our vine, our brush mark gets thinner. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and rinse my brush and just really quickly blow dry my painting again. Okay, so since we have some of our conch shell on our palette, I'm going to add just a little dab of our engine red here onto our palette, not too much. And taking our, let's go with our number 8 flat brush. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of my engine red, and I'm going to mix that into my conch shell. So we're just creating a deeper light pink color when we add a little bit more of that red. What we're looking for here is just a little bit of a darker pink color from our initial conch shell. Okay. And once you have that down, we are going to paint 2 more circles, okay? And it is okay for these next circles to overlap some of our bigger circles, all right? And we're gonna do the same type of motion that we did with our conch shell. We're gonna start at the edge of our circle, and we are going to swoop down, creating that pretty little circle. Same kind of deal over here. I'm going to create another flower.
Emma, I have an interesting question for you.
Okay.
So somebody said that they just opened a brand new bottle of their purple and that the paint is kind of thick on the inside. Is there a way that you would suggest to thin it out?
Yeah, you can always just add a little touch of water to kind of thin down your paint. Another thing I would suggest when you're in a hurry and you want to paint along with us is to make sure that it's shaken really well. That's always important to do. And then, yeah, if that doesn't work, shaking it really, really well, maybe stick a kind of a paint stir, like a popsicle stick or a plastic eating utensil in there to mix it up really well. And then maybe once you put some on your palette, just a touch of water to kind of thin it out a little bit so that it makes it easier to work with. So you guys said that you can paint along with us. Okay, and one more circle up here. Okay, and I'm going to rinse my brush. All right, so now that we have some of our engine red and our mixed conch shell and engine red here, I am going to pick up some of my conch shell and put it to the side, and I'm going to pick up an equal amount of engine red, just like that. And I'm going to go ahead and mix these two colors together. So we get this really beautiful rosy color. Okay, so if you have a lot of paint on your brush from mixing those two colors together, then just grab a paper towel, hold your brush onto your paper towel like this, and just kind of, see what I did? Just kind of swipe some of that off, just kind of pinching your brush a little bit. Okay, remove some of that excess paint, and then you get this really fine tip on your brush. All right, so with this really pretty rosy color, I'm gonna dip, still working with my number 8 flat brush into this rosy color. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna paint little pretty C strokes, holding our brush totally perpendicular to our painting, starting a little bit further, a little bit inward from the edge of our flower, and just little C strokes, little kind of comma marks like this. And this is going to give the illusion that our very graphic looking flower has some petals on it. So just these little C marks, you end up with something like that. And make sure that you're holding your brush perpendicular to your painting. And we're going to do this same kind of technique to all of our circle flowers, but we're going to use this rosy color for all of our darker pink flowers. And I'm making sure to leave a little bit of open room in the center of my flowers, because we want to leave room for our flower center that we're going to paint later. Really quick, really sweet, really simple. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. Actually, we don't really need to rinse our brush for this next part. We're going to take some of that conch shell. I know we are doing a lot of mixing in this painting, so you guys are going to be excellent mixers at the end of this. Your color theory is going to be amazing. And we're going to mix this lighter pink that we have on our palette with this rosy color that we just used on our painting. And we're going to go ahead and mix those two colors together because we're looking for a lighter pink now. And if you haven't guessed already, we're going to use this color to do the same technique on our larger buds. So I'm just being mindful. I'm trying not to overlap onto my smaller flowers. So we're being mindful of that. Okay, until you end up with something like that. I'm gonna go ahead and rinse my brush now. Okay, so now it is time for our last flower. But before we do that, I'm just going to go ahead and blow dry this a little bit, make sure that it's totally dry before we move on. Okay, so we are going to add some titanium white and a little smidge of daffodil yellow. Just like that. And I'm still working with my number 8 flat. I'm going to take just a teensy, I mean a really small amount of yellow, and I'm going to mix that into my white. Because we're not looking for a light yellow color or anything like that. I'm really just looking for a nice subtle off-white color. So when we add a yellow or a light pink or something like that, or a light blue into our white, just a smidge of that, we get a nice off-white color. So that's what we're looking for with this white and yellow mixture. Okay, once those two colors are nice and mixed together, of course, offload your brush quite a bit. Okay, now we're going to paint these a little bit more petally flowers, little daisy looking flowers. Okay. And if you want to practice on your palette paper, feel free to do that. But we're going to start at the inside here. I'm actually going to, that's dry. I'm going to paint on here so you guys can see. We're going to start at the inside center of our flower. We're going to come up, make this little whoosh pattern and come down. Start at the inside, make a little whoosh, come back down. Okay, and we're going to do that all around to make that flower shape. So find where you want the inside of your flower to be, the center, I should say. And just start making those little petals. Starting at the inside, making that whoosh, and then falling back into the center. And then just carefully filling it in. Okay. Starting at the inside, making that whoosh. Coming back in. And do that all around until you have a full flower. And you can kind of go ahead, as you can see I'm doing too. If you're not pleased with the size or the shape of your petal, then that's totally okay. You can go ahead and paint over it right away until you're happy with the size and shape. I think I can fit 2 more petals here. We have 1 there, and I'm going to make another one of those flowers up in our corner here. So I want the center to be here. And because all of our flowers on our painting are so tight together, it really makes our bouquet look so fun and full. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just offload my brush. I don't have to worry about rinsing it. And we're going to take that off-white color. I'm going to take a little scoop of it, add it here, and I'm going to take another little tiny bit of yellow. You guys can barely even see it. Maybe a tiny bit more, and I'm going to add that to my off-white mixture. So we're looking for a really subtle yellow color here. Okay. Gonna offload again. We don't want a lot of paint on our brush. And I just saw that comment. You can totally go ahead and decide to put another coat of paint on your flowers. For time's sake, I'm not doing that tonight, but if you want to go back and watch this again and go ahead and pause so that you can make your flowers more opaque, then you can totally do that. It's up to you. Okay, so what I'm going to do real quick, I'm going to start at the edges of my petals. I'm going to hold my brush at the edge like this, and I'm going to circle and come up like that. So starting at the edge, I'm going to do a little swoop and come up. Okay, I'm just making those tiny little swooshes just to kind of highlight the petals of my flowers. Okay, we're just getting the edges of our flowers. Okay, and that's just really adding a little bit of dimension to our painting here. And we are almost done, you guys. So we are going to work with some of that hunter green again. So if you don't have any more on your palette, go ahead and add a little bit more of your hunter green. Keeping with my number 8 flat brush, I'm going to put some hunter green on that brush. And we don't want a whole lot of paint on our brush for this next thing. I am going to, with not a whole lot of paint, hold my hunter green loaded brush perpendicular to the center of my white flowers. And I'm going to dab the center. And as I dab the center, I'm going to turn my brush around. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing on my other white flower here. I'm just dab, tap on the center. And I'm turning my brush, rotating it as I go, still keeping it perpendicular to my painting. You guys see what I did there? Just adding a little bit of texture to the center of our flowers. And now I'm going to rinse my brush. And I'm going to use some of that yellow that we have on our palette already. And I'm going to do the same thing I did to my white flowers with my yellow to my pink flowers. I'm going to dab, rotating as I go in the center of those flowers. Super quick and easy. Rinsing my brush again. Okay, so with that hunter green again, I'm going to take a little scoop of my hunter green, set it to the side, and now I'm going to take a little scoop of my off-white color. So we're looking for like a 2-to-1 ratio of our hunter green and our off-white color. Not that much white. We're just trying to lighten this color a little bit. All right. And if it's looking a little bit too light, you can keep zhuzhing it. You can add a little bit more of your dark green. offload a little bit. And with this color, I'm going to just add a few little highlights to my leaves there. It's the same kind of deal that we did with our off-white flowers, but we're just starting from the edges and kind of swooshing coming up like that. So we don't want a whole lot of paint on our brush because we want actually kind of barely any at all, because we're starting here at the edge, and then you can kind of work your way in to create some of those highlights. So we're starting at the edge of our leaf. Can you guys see that okay? We're starting at the edge, we're swooping to the other tip of our leaf. And then as we keep doing that and we kind of come towards the center of our leaf, our brush starts to run out of paint. And so the highlights that we're adding to our leaves become a lot more subtle because we're losing that paint, and it looks like it's really blending very nicely with our leaf. Starting at the edge, swooping down, and then keeping that same kind of motion as we move to the center of our leaf. And as we do that, we are losing some of that paint and we're getting a more subtle appearance. And this is just adding a little bit more interest to our leaves. So you can go ahead and do that to as many of those leaves as you'd like. All right, so go ahead and rinse your brush. We are going to do one more thing, a couple more things, and then we are done, you guys. So with that yellow that you have on your palette, we're actually going to take the end of our brush. Someone said close up. See, we just added a little bit of detail to our leaves there with that lighter green. Okay, with the end of your brush, this end, we're going to dip that end into our yellow. Okay, so yeah, that's what we're doing. And with those little tiny stems that we created in the beginning with our hunter green that were just going nowhere, we are going to make little dots with our yellow to create those little tiny blossoms. So I'm going to touch down my yellow at the end, and I'm just going to kind of give it a little circle motion. And if you want to do this with a brush, if you want to make a circle with a normal brush, then by all means be my guest. But this is just kind of a cool technique to create a really perfect little circle every single time. Okay. And we have one more thing to do and then we're done. So take your favorite color that we painted with tonight or this afternoon, really. I think that I am going to choose my ink spot. Got a little bit more. And I'm going to thin it down. By that, I just mean that I'm going to dip my dry brush in my water basin. And then I'm going to mix a tiny bit of that water into my paint. Thin it down a little bit so that it makes it really smooth and glidable and paintable. And in the bottom right corner, don't forget to sign your painting. And with that, you guys, I think we are done. So if you enjoyed our Michael's paint night tonight, we do one of these every single Monday night here with Michael's at 8 p.m. Eastern time. You can find it again on Michael's homepage. If you want to watch this back and paint it again, or you missed something and you want to go ahead and watch it back, then check on Michael's YouTube page for this video in about 24 to 48 hours, and you can rewatch it at your own leisure. If you loved this and you want to see more paintings like this and more painting tutorials like this, then make sure to go check out our Facebook page, Let's Paint with Plaid on Facebook, for lots of great content like this. One of the cool things about that group is that if you want to paint your finished painting that you did today, during this class, then you can go ahead and post it on that group. I'm always looking through that group at all your comments and all of your paintings, and it really brightens my day to see what you guys painted along with me, and I always feel so honored. So make sure to check out that Facebook group. It's a really great Facebook group, lots of great educational content and lots of painters supporting each other with their nice comments about each other's artwork. So we want to give a big thank you to Michaels for allowing us to be here today to do this class with you guys. It's always such a pleasure to do this class with you all, and we will see you next time. Bye, guys.